start the recording too. So we will be recording this, so it'll go on our YouTube channel as well. Sadhvi and Arielle, hello. And welcome to Warwick's.
So good to be with you, Julie.
Thank you. It's wonderful to have both of you, even virtually. We hope that at some point we'll be back doing events at the store, but in the meantime, it's so wonderful to be able to bring both of you to our readers and to your fans virtually. So thank you both for being here.
Such a joy. Such a joy and a blessing.
Thank you. Just real quick, I'm going to just tell people a little bit about what's going to happen today and how they can order the book. So if you're watching on YouTube after the fact, this is not live anymore, so we won't be taking any live questions. But if you're on with Facebook with us right now, there is a comment section that I'm going to be talking to you at once I go off screen. In that section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting in Sadhvi's book, Hollywood to the Himalayas, that you can easily click and order that book from us. If you've watched us before, you've heard me say this a million times, but any way there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick's. We can ship. But what we'd love to do is if you are in the state, and I forgot to mention, we're located in the San Diego area, La Jolla, California. If you are in the area, we would love for you to stop by and pick up the book from us and see some other great things that are in the store there. So when you click on that, you can click the option to pick up in store, but we can also ship it to you. Also in that comment section, if you have a question for Sadhvi, Arielle and Sadhvi are going to talk for about 35-ish minutes. Don't be shy. If you have a question, we love audience questions. So go ahead and pop those into the comment section. We'll get to as many as we can. And I'll bring those into their conversation, probably about the 35-ish minute mark. So with that, let me introduce these wonderful women and we will get the conversation going. Sadhvi, Bhagawati, help me, Arielle. Saraswati. I had it a minute ago in my head, but it just left. Sorry about that, Sadhvi. Serves on the United Nations Advisory Council on Religion and on the steering committees of the International Partnership for Religion and Sustainable Development and the Moral Imperative to End Extreme Poverty, a campaign by the United Nations and World Bank. She is also the Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance, an international interfaith organization dedicated to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene. President of Divine Shakti Foundation, a foundation that runs free schools, vocational training programs, and empowerment programs, and director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival at Paramath Niketan Ashram. Is that correct?
You're doing it great.
There we go. Which has been covered in Time, CNN, the New York Times, and other prestigious publications, and has been noted by both the Prime Minister and Vice President of India. Sadhvi has lived for 25 years at the Param Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India, where she oversees a variety of humanitarian projects, teaches meditation, lectures, writes, counsels individuals and families, and serves as a unique female voice of spiritual leadership throughout India and the world. Welcome. She is here today to talk to us about her new book, Hollywood to the Himalayas. Joining her today is Arielle Ford. Arielle is an acclaimed relationship expert and the international best-selling author of The Soulmate Secret. For the past 30 years, she has been living, teaching, and promoting consciousness through all forms of media. She is a celebrated love and relationship expert, author, speaker, and is the co-creator and host of Evolving Wisdom's Art of Love series. Her mission is to help women find love, keep love, and be loved. With that, ladies, have a wonderful conversation, and we'll see you in about a half hour.
Great. Thanks, Julie. Hey, Sadhvi, so fun to be with you.
Oh, what a joy. What a joy as always.
So I know your background, but all these people do not. So you grew up as a nice Jewish girl from Los Angeles in an upper middle class family, went to all the best schools, went to Stanford, was working on a PhD, and from the outside looking in, had this wonderful life. You were an only child, but you were adorable and loved, and you had friends, and you were traveled. But what happened? What happened to that life?
Well, nothing happened to that life itself, but that life was a part of my existence. Thankfully, it was a very large part of my existence. But there was also another part of my existence, which was a part that suffered very, very greatly. I had, as you know, experienced very severe trauma in early childhood. And I had carried the pain of that with me into adolescence and into my early 20s. And I really suffered on the inside. Here, everything was perfect on so many levels. And yet, I was unable to trust myself. I was unable to trust the universe. I was unable to really engage in life on any meaningful, deep level because of the way that I suffered. And I did what so many of us do, which is I tried to alleviate that suffering, to alleviate that pain. We turn, so many of us do in different ways, to alcohol, to drugs, to food, to sex, to gambling, to alleviate that sense of pain and struggle and suffering in our life. And that's exactly what I did. I turned to food. I was very severely bulimic for many, many years. And it was what I now look back and realize, a very well-intentioned effort to alleviate the pain that I experienced. And I've come to look at all of addiction really as that, as a spiritual quest that has just kind of gone awry. It's that knowledge within ourselves that says something is not right. This experience in my heart, this experience in my mind is not my highest truth. It is not who I am supposed to be, what I am supposed to feel. The dilemma is that instead of actually engaging in practices that help us really feel that, we turn to things to just take us out of that experience for the moment. And of course,
I want to just inform the listeners that what you're talking about in terms of severe childhood trauma was sexual abuse by your biological dad, that your addiction and your bulimia led you to be institutionalized in different treatment centers, which weren't helping. And that, in fact, you were never on a spiritual path during those days.
absolutely.
Right? But
Absolutely.
you inadvertently were thrown onto the path, which is maybe a place to start your story about how in the world did you go from Stanford to India?
Sure. So yes, the details that you shared are, of course, absolutely true. And I would have been on a spiritual path if someone at any point had said to me, hey, by the way, there's this thing and you can do it. It applies to you. It will benefit you. And it actually is going to work much better than eating food and throwing it back up to take care of the way you feel inside. That sense of lack, that sense of not good enoughness, unworthiness, the sense of not trusting yourself or the universe, that experience of stress and dis-ease. And by the way, just for a quick moment of diversion, that even though that was my particular trauma, it's important to realize for the listeners from this early on that whatever you are going through, whatever the source of your dis-ease, your sense of difficulty, suffering, struggle, conflict, stress in your life, that spiritual path, the lessons that I've learned on the spiritual path apply to all. It's important, as Arielle did, to share the details of the story, lest anyone ever think, oh, well, she doesn't really know what pain is. She doesn't really know what suffering is. This applies only to people who haven't really suffered. So we share the details so that you know, yes, I know pain, I know struggle, I know suffering. And yet, the freedom and the joy that I have also come to know can be yours. And so the journey from Stanford to the Himalayas, the whole thing went Hollywood to the Himalayas, but via Stanford. So I ended up there in India because, as you mentioned, I was not on a spiritual quest, but I was married to a wonderful man who was. And he wanted to go to India. He wanted to further that spiritual path. The only reason that I agreed to go, other than just to make him happy, was I was a very, very strict vegetarian and had been one since childhood. And I had traveled a lot in Europe. I had traveled in South America, and I had experienced how difficult it is to get good, pure vegetarian food easily, without stress, without struggle, without looking up lots of words in, translation books. And so when he said India, I thought, well, all right, at least I can eat happily, and they know what vegetarian food means. So I took a semester off of my PhD program, and we went to India with backpacks. Opened up a 500-page Lonely Planet guidebook in Delhi. And I said, Rishikesh. It's literally like the book seemed to open to Rishikesh. And it was close to Delhi. It had mountains, it had a river, it had yoga places. It sounded fantastic. We get to Rishikesh. And in Delhi, I had reserved the hotel we were going to stay in. And so we get to Rishikesh, and it turns out that the hotel I've reserved is the only hotel in the whole city that actually required us to carry our bags across this swinging footbridge. And it's amazing because we hadn't given any advance payment, hadn't done anything like that, no credit card on file. And it would have been so easy for me to just say, this is ridiculous, let's choose a different hotel. But I knew I was being guided and called and pulled, whether we speak about an inner voice or an inner knowing or intuition or inner wisdom. It was pulling me. And so we picked up our bags and carried them across the bridge. Of course, there are, for those of you thinking about coming to visit this Himalayan paradise, there actually are boats that come across, and there's coolies, and it's very easy. But the driver had not told us any of this. He had just said, you cross bridge. So we get to the hotel and put down our bags. And I'm hot and sweaty and tired, and said, I'm going to go put my feet in the river. I didn't know the river was holy. I didn't know the mountains were holy. I get down to the river, and standing on the banks of this sacred river, even before I get my feet in, I had this incredibly powerful spiritual experience of oneness, of union, of connection, of awakening, of divinity, of whatever word we use for it. And it transformed my life. I burst into tears. I knew that I had come home, and I knew that who I was one with the universe. and one with that divine perfection of the universe. And it was an extraordinary, unsolicited, unimagined, unanticipated experience of grace. And I've been there since. There are, of course, as Arielle, you know, so many other stories of coming to the ashram to actually find Parmarth Nikatan Ashram, where I now live. Stories of literally hearing a voice telling me to stay there. Stories of literally getting my feet glued to the ground such that I couldn't walk out of the ashram. Invisible glue to glue my feet to the ground.
Well, I know that you went with your husband because he was in search of a guru, and you walked through this ashram knowing that you needed to stay. And when you excitedly told him, I found the guru, what happened then?
Well, it was very important to him that his spiritual path was his. And one of the dynamics of our relationship was a very deep feeling that he had of a need to have his own path, to walk his own path, to not be, as he used to say, in my orbit in that way. And so sadly, because when I had found my guru, I really thought, oh, this is going to be perfect. He's going to love this. He'll think this is wonderful. You know, I found the guru for him. Unfortunately, that was not to be, because to him it was essential that he find his own guru and not come and be transformed and inspired and awakened by the guru I had found. So, but beautifully, fast forward a few decades, and he actually has come back and has been a very beautiful friend, a dear friend, a beautiful ally, and has been very, very deeply touched by, inspired by my guru, Puja Swamiji, and loves him and reveres him and adores him very deeply. It just took a long time for him to circle back to that being okay for him to do.
So you've now been at Parmarth Nikatan Ashram, the largest in Rishikesh, for 25 years. Give us sort of the short version of how you went from PhD grad student to renunciate and taking vows of celibacy and learning Hindi and becoming part of this culture that you didn't know a thing about until you did.
Well, when I knew that I was meant to stay there, when I knew standing on the banks of Ganga that this was home. I remember one day I went into Rishikesh city, where we are. The ashrams are on the opposite side of the river from the downtown side. So it's a very peaceful, beautiful place to be. And I had gone into downtown Rishikesh for some work, some errands. And I came back and I had this experience of inside me. It said, thank God I'm home. So nice to be home. And for a moment, I thought, oh yeah, I just mean like, thank God the hecticness of the day is over. Thank God I'm back to where I'm staying. But I realized in that moment also very deeply, oh no, it's not just thank God I'm home as in back to my temporary place I'm staying, but actually it's so nice to be home. And I was deeply aware of that. So once I knew that, and I really knew I was meant to stay, the rest kind of fell into place very easily. I say that it feels like God the divine universe, whatever we say, came through me with a very, very high powered dust buster and literally sucked out of me that which was not conducive to living the life I was meant to live. So desires for bagels to soy lattes to sex and sort of everything and anything in between was not something that I struggled with very dearly. Thank God. It was something that got kind of pulled out of me when the universe made me know this is where you're meant to be, that it was like the universe came in and just supported that and cleared away the challenges that would have made me go, oh my God, what about this? And oh my God, I need that. And so the path of renunciation became really very obvious, that it just was the next step in my unfolding, in my journey. It felt much more like a solidification of something that had actually happened already, because I didn't take these vows for 4 years after I moved there. But I was already living that life, and the official ceremony, the official initiation really just kind of solidified all of that. And then as the years have gone by, it's just blossomed and blossomed and blossomed and blossomed. You know, in India, we use the word dharma to literally mean your purpose or the right way, the right path of your life. And it just was really clear, this is my dharma. So yeah, of course, I learned to speak Hindi and started living by the ashram schedules and rituals. And my guru, Puja Swamiji, is very, very committed to service. For him, service is really the most natural outcome of any spiritual practice. And so we serve. We serve all the time. And whether it's children, whether it's orphans, whether it's women, whether it's sick people, whether it's rivers that are polluted, trees that are being cut down, whatever it may be or whomever it may be, we serve. And so that service became very, very critical to not just my daily schedule, but my entire spiritual practice. And having spent most of my life as someone who thought about what can I get? You know, my dad used to tease me that I used to call my jeans by name, that I was the only one he knew who called her jeans by name. You know, my Jordache or my Guess or my Calvin Klein. And going from that focus of one's life to a focus on serving and serving and giving has been just extraordinarily transformational and so healing in terms of getting out of yourself and your story and your drama and your identity and your history.
I was wondering if you'd share the words Swamiji gave you to encourage you to let go of your suffering.
So I asked him one day, it was in the very beginning, and I asked him about fear. Because as I mentioned earlier, I was stressed all the time, worried all the time. I had deep fears of abandonment, deep fears of being not good enough, not worthy enough, not lovable, not worthy of love. And I asked him about fear. And he said, you fear because you don't trust. And I gave him my story. It was the first time I had told him my history. And I gave him my story of, okay, this is what has happened to me. This is why I don't trust. And he said, are you going to take that to the grave with you? And I was like, the grave? I was 25. And I said, the grave? Of course not. He said, well, are you going to let it go on your deathbed? How about a week before you die? How about a month before you die? And I'm looking at him thinking, is he trying to tell me I'm going to die soon? Is this some sort of, delicate way of planting that seed? And I said, no, of course not, Swamiji. I'll let it go a lot before that. I, of course, was in therapy and working and undergoing, deep processes. And he said, you're waiting for someone to draw the line. You're waiting for someone to come in and say, it's okay now to be free. You can let it go now. You're done. And he said, no one will. Either you can carry it to your deathbed, you can let it go a week or a month before you die, or you can let it go tonight. And I was like, tonight? And he said, yeah, tonight. Give it to the river. We have this beautiful fire ceremony, and I want you to take part in the fire ceremony. And then afterwards, stand in the river, hold the sacred river water in your hands, and offer your pain, offer your anger to the river, and let her take it. And I spent most of the rest of the day in this skepticism, this cynicism, this now, of course, very embarrassing 25 years later, condescending view of this instruction. I was an academic. I was in the midst of getting a PhD in psychology. I was on the receiving end of psychology. And the idea that one could just let go seemed absurd to me. It seemed very sweet, very nice. I appreciated the effort, but it seemed impossible. And at some point, late afternoon, early evening, I had a moment that I will always be grateful for, where I said, okay, just do it sincerely. What do you have to lose? Just don't mock it. Okay, of course, we know the river is not going to sweep away your pain. Obviously, it's not going to work. But just out of respect for this incredible being, do it sincerely. It's been offered to you by a being revered as an incarnation of the divine on earth. Out of respect for this being, do it sincerely. And so I did. And what I found was, as I stood in the river and cried and cried and cried into the moonlight, that I was able to let it go. And I spent, of course, many weeks and months trying to find it again, convinced that it hadn't really happened. But what I realized was, I didn't need to hold on. I didn't need to stay identified with something that had happened 20 years ago, almost, by that point. I didn't need to stay identified based on the young child who suffered, but who was no longer me. That there was no longer a cell in my being who had been abused or abandoned. That here I was, a 25-year-old, beautiful woman with a life full of incredible blessings, incredible opportunity, incredible love. And I know I didn't need to keep holding on to this identification with a young child who had been harmed. And that I actually could, while feeling love and compassion and tenderness and caring for her, I could let go of that pain. And 25 years later, I can tell you it worked.
So for those of us who cannot enter the banks of the Ganges, whether we're in San Diego or wherever, how can we do this process for ourselves?
Having trust in the universe. See, when we hold on, there's two things at work when we hold on. One is a sense that if I don't hold on, if I don't stay angry, somehow the universe is going to absolve that person of what they've done. And so one of the reasons we hold on is this sense that somehow we are God's secretary, that God appointed us as, his steno to keep notes of who was deserving of what. And that if we let go, if we forgive, we fear that the one who has harmed us will somehow get let off the hook, that we need to hold on in order to set those karmic scales right. And the first piece is to know that that just isn't true. We're not the karmic police. Us holding on or us letting go has nothing to do whatsoever with the karmic ramifications that people have based on their actions. An apple seed is going to become an apple tree. It doesn't need you to stand over it going, just remember, no oranges, just remember, no oranges. Like it knows. There's a law of nature that makes apple seeds turn into apple trees. And when people have planted seeds of harm, there will be metaphoric trees in their life that grow, that give metaphoric fruit, that has zero to do with whether we've held on or we've let go. We let go, we forgive, not because what they did was okay, but because we deserve to be free. And that is the critical first piece, is recognize that you deserve to be free. That someone or something happening to you, purposely, accidentally, knowingly, unknowingly, does not render you unworthy of, unqualified for freedom. Freedom is your birthright. It is all of our highest dharma, highest purpose. So whatever someone else did in their ignorance, in their pain, in their confusion, don't offer your life's purpose on the altar of someone else's mistakes. They've made their mistakes. Those mistakes will have their ripple impact in the world with ramifications in that person's life. But don't now offer the rest of your life on that altar of their confusion, their ego, their ignorance, their mistakes. The second piece is the identification piece. We actually identify as the one to whom these things have happened, or the one who made the mistakes. Because for a lot of us, that which is holding us back may be things we've done, mistakes we've made, ways we've lived. And we need to stop identifying as that. So whether it is something that happened to us or something we've done, it isn't you. My favorite way of thinking about this, that is, I think, really simple and really easy to understand, is if you were driving down the freeway and your friend called you and said, "Who are you?" And you said, "Oh, I'm exit 17. Your friend would be like, no, 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 I didn't say where are you. I said, who are you? And then if you said, oh, now I'm exit 18, your friend would think that either your phone was really staticky and you couldn't hear, or that you had pretty much lost your marbles, because we know intuitively that we are not where our vehicle has reached. For me to say, I am a 50-year-old white American female sannyasi living in India is like saying I'm exit 17. That is where this vehicle, this model car, has reached at this intersection of time and space. But it's not who you are. Every dent, every paint job is not who you are. It's just things that have happened to your vehicle as it travels on this journey of life. And wherever you stop it, at any intersection of time and space, there's going to be a place. But that isn't you. And in the same way, we've all got a size, a shape, an age, a color. We've got impressions upon our brain from that which has happened to us. They literally are just, neurologically, we speak about patterns. In India, we speak about sanskaras, impressions on the psyche. Things that impress themselves upon us chemically, electrically, energetically. But they're not us. They're just impressions, patterns in the cells of our brain that then tell the rest of our body what to do.
If we're not the size, shape, color, age, location, who are we?
Well, there's lots of words for that. Choose any one that feels right for you. We are the divine. We are soul. We are spirit. We are consciousness. We are love. We are truth. We are infinity. And I could probably think of another few if you gave me another few minutes, but that's who we are. We are the unchanging aspect of ourselves. Think about it. You've been saying I since you were how old? Usually about 2. That's why we tend to call them the terrible 2s. That's when kids learn I, me, mine, and no. That sense of autonomy, no. Terrible 2s, but it's the beginning of that sense of self. Hey, look, I'm separate. Hey, look, when I throw my peas on the ground, it makes mom dance. I've been saying I, me, mine, since about then. How many times has your body changed? How many times has your role in society changed? How many times has your career changed, right? We went from being a kid on the playground to a student to, we keep moving. How many times have your relationships changed? How we identify in relationship when we're 6 compared to today keeps changing. But we are the unchanging aspect of all that. That's who you are. So there's very, very beautiful meditations. I don't think we have time today, but there's very beautiful meditations to peel back the layers of who we think we are into who we really are. But I'll give you the answer, which is you're none of the color, the size, the shape, the race, the religion, or the chemical or electrical patterns of energy in your brain. You are that which is consistent as the body changes, as the roles change, as the drama changes, as the chemistry and electricity changes, you are that which is constant and consistent.
Before I ask you the last question, I just want to say the thing that I love so much about your book, about Hollywood to the Himalayas, is that you are no holds barred, taking us inside of every aspect of your life. I mean, you reveal everything, every high, every low, every feeling. It's breathtaking, the depth of what you share. And in really understandable language, show us the path that you went on and how you went from being somebody who suffered with fear and trust issues and abandonment issues to being someone who I know for 11 years now consistently is filled up, happy, giving love, receiving love, and being loved the way that you are, in such a way that as a reader, it is transformative. Like there's a vibration to your book that has a healing overtone to it. But given that this is your book, what is the thing, your biggest dream for the reader to take away from it is?
I would love the readers. Well, two things. Of course, I would love all of the readers to love the story, to laugh, because it's funny also, to cry, to experience the ecstasy, the expansion, the awakening, the challenges, to experience the fascinating world of religion in India, of living in an ashram in India. But I also really, the core takeaway for me, and really the reason that I wrote the book, as Arielle, you know so well, because you were the one who kept pushing me and literally almost forced me to write the book. The reason that I wrote it was to help people understand that grace does not discriminate. That while reading the biographies and autobiographies of religious leaders from the East who basically came out of the womb enlightened and, or who knew from early childhood that they were different and special and they weren't interested in
Where'd you go?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Sorry about that. My camera just went off, but I'm hoping came back on. Just 1 second here.
Okay. Well,
sorry about that. I had a momentary camera issue. Hang on.
All right. Well,
sorry about that.
Have the technology gods put fairy dust on your camera and have it back up.
Is it okay now?
I can't see you, but
can't see me. Okay, hang on. Let's see. There we go.
You're back.
Okay, good.
We're
sorry about
that.
So my camera's getting overly excited. So I want people to know that grace does not discriminate, that whatever has happened to you, whatever you've done, it doesn't matter. Grace is there for you, available for you, accessible to you. All that grace wants is that you should open your heart and let go of that which is blocking you from experiencing grace. The pain, the grudges, the unfulfilled expectations, the false identities, the attachments, to realize that that is what is standing between you and grace. And while we think that that's what's going to give us happiness and joy, if I just could get this thing I want, to actually realize that that's what's keeping you from living in grace, and to be able to trust fall into the universe, the way that we learn to do in school and in corporate retreats. You fall back into the arms of someone who you may not even know, or who might even be an enemy or a competitor. But we just know that person is going to catch me. And to know the universe is going to catch you, that the universe is there for you, and that grace is available for you. And whatever your story is, that grace is there. And if you didn't come out of the womb enlightened, don't worry, neither did I. And yet I found grace and I found freedom. And yes, my dharma was to find it and experience it in India on the banks of Ganga. Yours is different. But whatever your dharma is, your highest calling and purpose is to be free. And that's possible for you.
Thank you.
That was amazing. And what a beautiful way to end. The message is just so perfect for everybody. So I have to ask one question because I just have to. It's just part of what was this past year, dealing with the pandemic and we lost.
Sorry, I'm still here audioly. Sorry, my camera seems to keep shutting off for some reason. I'm going to just turn it back on, and I'll just, whenever it shuts off, I will turn it back on.
Okay.
One sec. But I'm with you auditorially. I can hear you.
So just real quick, was there anything that was, because this path for everyone is a difficult one. But was this past year excessively difficult because of the pandemic, did you find?
So, yes, absolutely, for people. It was so difficult because people felt disconnected. And connection is the key and the core. My favorite joke about this, which I hope my camera doesn't shut off in the middle, but anyway, my favorite joke about this is the man who goes to the doctor and he tells the doctor there's something very wrong with me. Whatever I touch, it hurts. I touch my head and it hurts, and I touch my knees and they hurt, and I touch my back and it hurts. And the doctor runs every test and every scan. And he says to the man afterwards, he says, well, the good news is there's nothing wrong with your head or your back or your stomach. The bad news is your finger is broken. And since your finger is broken, whatever you touch, it hurts. But not because the problem is in the body, but because the problem is in this broken connection in the bones of the finger. And in our lives, we hurt. We tend to blame things around us, people around us, situations around us, but the core issue is we are disconnected from our deeper self, our higher self, from the divine. And so with COVID, what has happened is that because that very, very deep inner spiritual connection with God is so rare, we get that need for connection fulfilled by other people, the world, our social life, our workplace, meeting people, being with people, going outside. And when that was cut off, we were separate. And people suffered. Aside, of course, from the fear of getting COVID, aside from the tragedy of losing loved ones, that's a whole other tragedy. But just the emotional, psychological aspect, separate from the life is in danger survival aspect, was we've been disconnected. And lack of connection is the source of pretty much every single thing that ails us today, from personal depression, anxiety, addiction, to conflict in our relationships, to conflict in our societies and our communities, to war, to what's happening with Mother Earth. We feel disconnected from ourselves, so we're depressed. We feel disconnected from each other. We fight, there's conflict. We feel disconnected from people of other colors, races, religions, sexual orientations, countries. We fight. We feel disconnected from Mother Earth. It enables us to use and abuse and harm her in a way that ultimately is harming ourselves. So connection is critical. And when we don't have it, and when we don't know where to get it from, we suffer. And that's I think one of the core key issues that's been happening this year is people have had to re-find ways of connection. And Zoom, of course, has been wonderful. It's enabled people to experience the connection even though they're not physically there. But what I hope is that people have had the opportunity to also go within and find a source of connection and a sense of connection within, because the inner technology doesn't fail. And, outer technology, it works sometimes, it doesn't work other times, as we've seen. And that inner technology doesn't fail us. And so I'm really hoping that, one of the things we realized from the beginning is, in many ways, this is an opportunity, a great opportunity to really engage in that spiritual work that so many of us have been thinking about doing for so long.
Yes, absolutely. And this has been, the Zoom connection is, thank goodness for it, because I think without it, we would even be feeling so much more isolated and relying on outside forces for information, where at least we're able to talk with each other, that people we trust, and that's been amazing. Arielle, thank you so much for conducting this conversation.
It's always great to be with you.
Oh, it's wonderful having you. Hopefully we will see you at the store soon. Sadhvi, next time you're in La Jolla, we hope to see you as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for organizing this, coordinating it, moderating it so beautifully. And I look forward to meeting you.
Me too.
In person, hopefully, whenever I'm there.
Same for me. So thank you again. So I'm going to go and turn Facebook and the recording off. So good night, everybody. And again, Hollywood to the Himalayas. Arielle, thank you. And good night, Sadhvi.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.